Welcome to The Line. Lawmakers wrapped up this year's 60-day legislative session last week, but Governor Susana Martinez immediately criticized what they accomplished and signaled that she will call them back for a special session. How would you rate this year's session? Was it a success or a failure? Why? I want to hear from you. Get in touch with us here at NewMexicoInFocus.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter. I'm joined at the table this week by Sophie Martin. She's an attorney and editor of DukeCityFix.com. Daniel Foley's here, former House Minority Whip. Tom Garrity from the Garrity Group PR. Laura Sanchez-Rivey, she's an attorney at Cuddy and McCarthy LLP. Laura, the session, I mean, words like success and failure are very tricky to sort of parse when you have things like this. But let me start here. The legislative body was very active. A lot of stuff came out of the House, a lot of stuff came out of the Senate, a lot of stuff made it to the governor's desk. Let's judge them first. Did they get the job done this cycle?
I think they did. I spent more time this session up there than I had in most recent sessions. And you know, over the past 10 years, I've been able to see a lot of what's happened. I really feel like this year there was a lot of working together across the aisle, which is interesting. There was a lot of bipartisan support for certain bills, a lot of partnership or sponsorships from both sides of the aisle. And I felt like they really got a lot done. You know, we've had sessions in the past where we've had many more bills passed than we did this year. And I think in this case, they really focused in on, I think it was something like 275 bills that actually got passed through both houses. I think the criticism is easy. You know, for me, it's always black and white, right? A lot of people say that, but for me, there's a lot of gray there. And when you look at, you know, when the budget was passed, I think in other sessions, they've certainly made an effort to try to pass it a little earlier, but in this case, they got, you know, a lot of difficult decisions made and got it passed and got it out the door. Unfortunately, a lot of the rhetoric started well before that time. I think that's been, you know, some of the negative that people have come out of it with. But I really feel like it was a successful session.
Dan, the governor's office seems to think completely otherwise. The spokesperson says that basically they wasted their time goofing off on things like official songs and hamburgers and things like that. What's your sense of it? Did the legislature get it done this
I don't think so. I think, you know, I think it's unfair to say that they wasted their time goofing off on stuff. Every year there's always opportunities to recognize people, and that's part of, and also that's part of bringing the camaraderie, right? I mean, that's part of when Sophie and I don't get along, or Laura and I don't get along, and Laura brings that bill to the floor, that memorial, that you kind of realize, all right, she's not that bad of a person, and we can talk about it. I think those are important. I think when it comes to what their main goal is in the 60-day session, which is the budget, you know, and it is every year. I mean, that's one of the problems in New Mexico. I mean, this annual budget that we pass now takes effect in July. They're back again in January to figure this out. I mean, it's literally about a 6-month circle. You know, I think, you know, when you go in as a legislative body and you know that the person who has the veto power says, look, I'm not raising taxes, we got to cut some more spending, we got to do this stuff, and you send up a budget that's raising $300+ million in new taxes, and you know that that's not going to be a balanced budget, I'm not saying that you have to take what the governor gives you, but it seems to me like that with the change in the House and the growth of seats in the Senate, that the Democrats kind of dug their heels in and said, look, we don't have to have any opportunity to negotiate. We're going to send you a bill that's what we want, and that's their prerogative.
Tom, interesting I hear Dan's point, but interestingly, and going back to Laura's point as well, some things that got out of both houses had such overwhelming bipartisan support. I mean, overwhelming. Like some cases, maybe 1 or 2 people opposing. And as far as the budget that Dan just mentioned on the Senate side, we really only had 4 Republicans that were opposing on the Senate side. So how does this, is this a box for the governor now? I mean, it's one thing for Democrats to lay this on their desk. It's a whole other deal when you have Republicans joining in as well.
Well, I think that there are Republicans who are in the Senate, and then there are Republicans who are in the House.
Gotcha.
And you know, I think the Republicans in the Senate are much more focused on bipartisanship as opposed to what we saw over in the House. Case in point with the veto with respect to the teacher pay and being able to use that time and such, which I think Senator Brandt did a fantastic job of really, you know, throwing down the bipartisan gauntlet and saying, you know what, this is, you know, in his mind, it was a wrong move.
And what party does he? What party does he?
He is a Republican from Rio Rancho, I believe. But you know, the House and the Senate, you know, to their credit, they put out, they did 2 budgets, not just one budget. They did 2 budgets. And, you know, the first budget was passed early on in the session, not talking about the feed bill, but for the balance of this current fiscal year, and then also for the second one. You know, what kind of gets me a little bit is that I'm trying to figure out what the communication lines are really like. because you have in the closing coverage of the session, you had Representative Egoff talking about the great communication specific around the budget and how the governor's office had said that it would be nice if they could wait on the budget for various reasons. Then all of a sudden there's this big public breakup of, wait a second, you sent us a budget that we didn't like. So I mean, it's politics as usual to an extent, but for the most part, I think I like what I saw coming out of both houses, House and Senate.
What is your sense of, now that we're going to take another lap at this potentially with a special session, again, it's the governor against everybody at this point. What can we expect different at this?
Well, I think everybody's going to reset. They're
Right.
going to take a look at the tax package that was sent up to the governor. They're going to take a look at the taxes that as far as the gas tax, food tax, all these other taxes. How are we going to balance the budget? So I think right now, if there is going to be a special session, that everybody's regrouping and saying, okay, what do we really want on this final lap?
Sophie, one of the little wrinkles that came out in this, and it's sort of dovetailing what Tom mentioned about Senator Brandt in his successful effort for a veto override.
30%,
Yeah, first time in the governor's term here. But we've also got a situation where, some things did pass, like an ethics commission. Let's start there. The Ethics Commission. Now, we can argue what it will be like once the voters approve, if they in fact do it. But it's no small thing that it made it to the governor's desk at this point.
But it didn't make it to the government.
My fault again. Say again.
Right,
Yeah.
and I think that's actually an important point.
Right.
That this legislature seems to have reached the point after, we're in our second term with Governor Martinez,
Right.
it seems to have reached the point where their most successful legislation is legislation that bypasses the governor because it's going to go straight to the voters.
That's right.
And we see this issue, I think, especially in California, with their very robust, and some would say too robust,
That's right.
program of bypassing, in that case, the legislature as well. That we've reached the point where it's like, okay, we're going to have to do business without you because we don't believe we can get it done with you. And I think that that's concerning, that there is so much division between our legislative body and our governor that the business of the state doesn't seem to be getting done.
Gotcha.
And so, I mean, we're in a sort of in-between period right now where we're waiting to see whether the governor will sign, veto, or pocket veto the legislation that Laura mentioned earlier, this body of bills that's come through. And I feel some real concern that what the governor has been signaling is, I will not, in fact, sign any of it until I get my budget. And that is deeply concerning because that strikes me as a real breakdown of not just the relationship between the two branches of government, but in the business of the state.
That's right. That's right. Dan, I want to talk about vetoes, but if you could real quick explain a pocket veto for the folks who might not.
Yeah, the pocket veto is just that, so at a certain time when the governor gets the bill later in the session, she doesn't have to act on it at all. She just lets it sit up there, and if there's no action by a certain date, then it's considered a pocket veto. She doesn't have to send a message down, doesn't have to sign anything, doesn't have to say anything. She doesn't even have to answer a question about it. Just sits there.
Then what's
and
the
it dies.
hullabaloo about? You led me straight there. We have some folks in the legislature saying, in fact, the governor, without a message, has in fact, within a certain period of time,
Right.
has in fact, it's not a veto. Technically not a veto.
I'll leave it to the constitutional scholars to actually quote the portion of it, but it says that she's got to send down a message.
Right.
Their stance, from what I'm understanding, is we sent a message. The message is the bill was vetoed. Now there's some sparsing here between, no, the Constitution says you got to tell us why you vetoed it,
Right.
and she says, I vetoed it. The message got sent down because they send down the message that says on this day the bill was vetoed. Normally there's some stuff. I remember Gary Johnson sent down some stuff early in my career, I think, where he sent down the veto message. The veto message was bad bill. Right, not right, tax increase, and so he would, it'd be one word, but he would satisfy that. If I was the governor or the governor's staff, this is not a place you want to be right now. I don't think that, in my opinion, getting before the New Mexico State Supreme Court is going to be friendly to Governor Susana Martinez.
Gotcha.
And so I think that.
So, she's not holding somewhat of a hand?
She's
here?
got one. There's one person on there, Judge Nakamura. I think that they've shown a propensity to be a little more liberal and to tend to lean towards progressive liberal views. And I think getting in front of them on these types of issues, if I was advising her, and I'm not, I'd say that's the last place you want to be. You don't want to be, as a Republican governor, at odds with the Democrat legislature in front of the New Mexico State Supreme Court.
So, I mean, on that point, what's interesting to me is that, when you talk about conservative and liberal justices or Supreme Courts, traditionally, those that are conservative are the ones that are most, I guess, when they are most literal with the Constitution. In this case, if you're literal with the Constitution, then the literal section that he's talking about of the Constitution says that the veto will accompany its objections and be sent to the original House, where the bill began, with the objections. And I mean, the literal interpretation is there were no objections; it was just veto, and that's the problem. And to the explanation that Dan is telling, the issue is that within 72, if it's more than 72 hours before the end of the session, basically she has the ability to veto it at that point. She only has 72 hours to do so. And the rule says you send it back to the original House with your objections. Unfortunately, it says with his objections because of the Constitution being so archaic. But in any event, that would be traditionally the literal interpretation of the Constitution. So in terms of, I know what Dan's saying as far as liberal and conservative. I think he's talking about liberal on a political stage. But if we're talking about a justice, interpreting the Constitution in a conservative way, literal to the Constitution, that's what it says. So I do agree with Dan, though, that it's an uncomfortable place for the governor to be in, to have this situation where all of a sudden you've got all three branches of government sort of at odds with each other. I think in general, the real losers are the public.
Okay, interesting. Tom, pick up on this as well. I want to get back to budget as well. But the idea that we could be heading to a Supreme Court fight, do we need this right now? And then second of all, on the budget, how do we get to where we need to go? If the governor's saying, look, I can deal with loopholes on taxes, I can deal with, voluntarily offering to pay taxes like Amazon just did, but everything else is out. But we got the legislators saying, we're going to start bouncing some checks here. Starting in July, we're going to start bouncing some checks unless we figure out something.
Yeah, so to start off with talking about, just generally sending messages down, in this era of transparency, and everybody wants to have more and more transparency in government, sharing reasons why you think a piece of legislation is bad or why you're vetoing, that goes into transparency.
Okay.
So, that's a good way to kind of let people know what's thinking, what are you thinking in there and stuff. As far as, sitting down and deciding what tax increases to keep and what other areas to cut, that process that you described is the process that if it isn't happening, it needs to happen between the legislature and the fourth floor. I know that there have been more visits this year between the Senate leadership and the fourth floor than there has been in previous years. So one would hope that with this increased communication, that you would have these types of budget deals being reached. However, looking at the comments from John Arthur Smith.
He's been a staunch supporter of her.
Yeah.
Just to see her go after him like she was kind of shocking to me.
Yeah, and John Arthur Smith, a great supporter in the past, but now, her supporters are fleeing.
Interesting. Sophie, we've got about 30 seconds left. Again, in a special, we still don't know what's going to be, death penalty, all this other stuff that could end up on the call as well during a special.
And that the governor has placed on the call in past sessions and special sessions where it has not seemed appropriate. She says, look, this is about the budget. And this is about my nominations, right? It seems to me that we would hope that she would stick to her word on that. But she has placed things on the call before that, not exactly state cheeseburger, but stuff that just isn't the budget and so shouldn't.
And Gene, before we go, I know we have other things, but I think it's important also to talk about the veto thing.
Okay.
After she got told that she didn't follow it, she then sent down messages, which I'm not an attorney, but I think, if you're going to take a stance that says I didn't do something wrong and you go behind after the fact and try to clean it up, I think it kind of says maybe you've acknowledged that you've done something wrong.
I don't think that's as a big a deal as you think.
That's right.
It's in the 72 hours.
That's right. We talked to Governor Romer in Colorado about this back in the early 90s, right? He went through this too. Now, in just a minute, we debate what might happen if federal dollars don't arrive to fund the Albuquerque Rapid Transit Project.